In this lesson, we cover the dopamine hypothesis of addiction. Now, kind of has two meanings, the dopamine hypothesis. I use the definition that's similar to the serotonin hypothesis of depression, that if you have dopaminergic dysfunction, essentially low levels of dopamine, or your dopamine's not functioning properly, you have issues in that regard, you might be more vulnerable to addiction. And the other side of the dopamine hypothesis is essentially that drugs are addictive because they trigger high levels of dopamine. Okay, so what is the dopamine hypothesis? Homework check. This is from the questions yesterday. They wrote down their workbook. This is just to get to make sure they actually do it, and to get ChatGPT to not answer the questions for them, right? Because they don't know what the questions are going to be. Okay. All right. Think, pair, share. Should OxyContin be banned for teenagers? Give them a minute and then go, what about social media? Kind of an interesting discussion point, I think. Okay, see if they can, anywhere, diagram the addiction cycle. If you've got mini whiteboards or just a blank piece of paper, do they remember it? Tap into that. Think, pair, share. What do they think all addictive substances have in common? And then we get into drug addiction and dopamine and what's happening in the brain. Okay, that's the answer to what do all drugs have in common, right? They increase dopamine release. Okay. All right. Think. What do they think dopamine hypothesis is going to be? And then we can talk, explain this hypothesis. Okay. And this becomes quite central in this chapter, in this unit on addiction, because a lot of our explanations come back to the idea of, okay, why would a certain factor cause addiction? Because it's going to reduce our levels of dopamine. So, for example, why might stress? Stress can reduce our dopamine levels. If you have a terrible diet, you're not consuming enough tyrosine, you might have low levels of dopamine. We come back to the dopamine hypothesis. So I'd say the dopamine hypothesis and the self-medication hypothesis are two really valuable things for students to know that can come back to most explanations for why people might become addicted to drugs, abuse substances. Okay. All right, and then I've taken some quotes here from some academic sources, probably more for your reference than the students. All right, interestingly, I think this is interesting. We get them to think about some natural activities, like we have a natural dopamine release, right? So, drugs increase that dopamine, but other things do as well. So why are they not as addictive? See if they can come up with two or more reasons, just 2 minutes. Okay, and then see this clip from Andrew Huberman explains it. I would start at 4:44. Hopefully that link will take you straight to 4:44. And also I put the explanation in the textbook. All right. One of the reasons is because of the massive highs and lows in the dopamine spikes, right? So the higher the high, the bigger the low. And this is the thing, if you're teaching opioids and heroin and these substances, I really want to hammer home the idea that yes, people take them because they make you feel good, yes. But there's the other side of the spectrum. You have the horrible withdrawal and all the negative consequences that come with it. I don't think we can be naive or overlook the fact of saying, I don't know why people would take these drugs. They're just crazy. It's like, no, it feels amazing. Apparently, I've never done it. But we have to hammer home but you get the horrible thing afterwards. This is why you want to keep doing it. Okay, I made a Socrative quiz just to give a break from Kahoot. You have to create an account, but I made a Kahoot instead if you want to use that one. To finish, just to break it up so it's not all a bit cut and dry this lesson, workbook notes, and then I've got a practice SAQ here. If you want to assign these, of course you can. I'm not saying you have to do these homework and every task and every lesson plan, but here is something you could do in this lesson. A practice SAQ, looking at chemical messengers, and just one tip here I would suggest, you could make them have to write it, but make the submission optional, and that just means that you're only marking work that students really care about and want to get feedback on. You're not having to mark ChatGPT's answer. It'll just be an idea. All right, coming up next, we look at some of my favorite studies, the Rat Park studies.